Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar on mind-body trauma care. My name is Molly Buss, and I'm the Community Relations Manager at the Earl E. Bakken Center for Spirituality and Healing. And my role for this webinar is to moderate the chat. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, perhaps sharing where you're joining us from or what you're excited to learn about today. And then just note, if you do want to share that introduction with all of the participants, you need to update the to field in the chat to all panelists and attendees. Before we get started, I just wanted to give a quick introduction of the Bakken Center for those of you that may not be familiar with our work. It is our vision to advance the health and well-being of individuals, organizations, and communities through integrative health and healing. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, we have strived to provide free resources and webinars to help you navigate these challenging times. And we need your help to continue to do this work. If you're able to, please consider making a donation of any amount. More information about how to make a donation will be provided in the post-webinar email. And just a few other logistical items I wanted to review to help you navigate the webinar functions. So as I shared, you're welcome to share your thoughts and comments in an introduction via the chat box. And then just note, depending on what type of device you're joining from, you do have the opportunity to minimize the chat box during the presentation. And I invite for you to do that during the components that aren't interactive to help you stay present. And then note the Q&A icon where you can submit your questions, and Bakken Center Director Mary Jo Kreitzer will ask our presenter as many as we have time for at the end of this session. If you aren't able to find those icons, hover your mouse over the bottom of the screen and they should show up for you. We will send out an email with a recording of the webinar, PowerPoint slides, and other resources later this afternoon. I am delighted to now introduce Dr. Mary Jo Kreitzer, founder and director of the Bakken Center for Spirituality and Healing. As I shared, Mary Jo will be facilitating the Q&A segment and will also share more information about our presenter.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Bakken Center Wellbeing Webinar. As Molly said, at the Bakken Center for 25 years, we've been advancing health and well-being in people, organizations, and communities. I want to acknowledge and thank all of our staff at the Bakken Center, and especially Molly, who masterfully manages all of the details for this webinar series. The year 2020 has certainly been marked by a constellation of transformative events, to say the least. As we approach the winter solstice and the transition to a new year, we want to acknowledge the impact that this year has had on our mind, body, and spirit, and connections with family, friends, and work colleagues. Our community, the earth on which we live, has felt shocks of collective trauma. And together, may our bodies heal and cultivate a sense of collective winter warmth during the forthcoming months. This webinar hopes to create space to feel into this present state of all of ourselves and learn different ways of doing so. Dr. Vian Nguyen Phang, Assistant Professor of Psychology and Director of the Mind-Body Trauma Care Lab in Duluth, we'll discuss grounding and coping strategies unique to this time period. These strategies aim to nourish our mind-body connections and specifically focus on building warmth within ourselves. For these practices, there are no resources required aside from your mind, body, and presence. Dr. Vian Nguyen Phang is a counseling psychologist and an assistant professor in the Department of Psychology at the University of Minnesota, Duluth. She serves as core faculty in the counseling clinical master's programs and directs the Mind-Body Trauma Care Lab. Her research focuses on interventions that promote mental and physical health integration, as well as mind-body connection. Dr. Nguyen Phang's work combines psychology and public health through aims to increase access to holistic, trauma-informed mental health care and to promote inclusivity through community engagement. In 2012, she completed a Yoga Alliance accredited 200-hour registered yoga teacher training. So Dr. Wenfeng will speak for about 45 minutes. And after that, I'm looking forward to the Q&A. So I'll turn it over now to you, Wenfeng.
Thanks, Mary Jo, and thanks, Molly, for having me, as well as Sue. I noticed that you popped on, so thank you, Sue, as well. I'm delighted to be here today to share this with you. And it seems like people are from all over, which is pretty exciting. A solid representation from Minnesota and Duluth, as well as people from the West Coast, East Coast, our friendly neighbor up north, Canada, as well as Europe and Italy. So welcome everybody, and thank you so much for taking the time here today to spend this hour with me, with each other. And hopefully from this, my hope is that you're able to take some grounding strategies with you as we enter this super busy time, if we're not in it already. So I think that mind-body trauma care can really be applied to any and all aspects of one's life. In this case, we're gonna talk about how to cultivate a sense of collective winter warmth through mind-body trauma care. Okay, so 2020, it has been anything but a direct path. So for this presentation today, let me just try and lay out the roadmap so we can at least know what to expect in this regard. So I'll begin with some mind-body grounding, and then talking about the collective trauma that we have all experienced. And then at the end, talking about ways in which we can care for ourselves, and then opening up for discussion. Okay, so this will be the hardest part in terms of participant engagement, I suppose. I don't know if anybody has used menti.com before. If you have, you can give a wave in the chat. Oh, and keep introducing yourself in the chat. It's nice to see where people are coming from. But on your internet browser or on your phone or iPad, try going to menti.com and typing in this code. Okay.
Deanne, I'm getting a note that the question is not open for voting.
Oh yes, it is not open for voting yet. That is true. But as long as you all have been able to enter in the code. Okay, I think that may be enough time. So for this, the code is 7488429. So, oh, thank you, Lindsay, for putting that in the chat. Okay, so with this grounding activity is for yourself in a way, thinking about what's going on in your mind at this moment. So you've chosen to take this hour for yourself, and see if you can allow yourself to do that. Letting go of whatever brought you here first. So before we enter this poll, let's take 20 seconds to think about, just to allow your mind to settle and notice if any words come up for you. So this little video GIF is 10 seconds, so I'll play it twice. There's no sound with this. This is just a timer, one would say. So that was our 20-second timer, allowing your mind to settle and just noticing if any words arose for you. So we'll switch over to this screen, menti.com. Then I'll open up this poll, and then just type in to your internet browser any words that came up for you. You can enter multiple words, and we'll see how people are feeling right now. So light right now is light, calm, busy, stress, tired. Oh, Christmas. Peace. So just some context behind this. This is a word cloud in which the more times somebody says something, the bigger the word is. So it's really amazing to see how many different words y'all are putting in, because some of these are quite small, at least on my screen, but I will try to read some of them. Right now it looks like tired, calm, anxious are the loudest words to me over here. Distracted. So I hope with this, it allows you all to see that we are more connected than we might think we are. There are some similar sentiments that you and your fellow peers. Can you make, yeah. I actually cannot make the word cloud larger because there are so many different words that are being used, but you can also make it larger if next to like you're viewing the end screen, there's a view options tab. If you click that, you can magnify it yourself. Yeah. Okay. So now I like how there are still things coming in. So I'll just keep this open. And if you're feeling ready, take time to reflect on what's going on in your body at this moment. How is your body feeling? And you can keep entering words and I will just switch back to the screen for the 20-second timer. Okay. So as y'all are feeling ready, oh, I like how still words. We got 842 words right now. So we'll close this one and we can move on to, oops. Here we go. The body one. So now this is open in terms of what's going on in your body in this moment. Tense, tight, tired, cold. Something that I'm noticing at least is the overlap between what people said that's going on in their mind and what's going on in their body. So tired being in both of them. Tired, tense, hungry. It is about lunchtime depending on where you are. Heavy. Okay. Thank you all for sharing what's going on with you now. So from there, in here, I'll keep it open in case people keep wanting to add because we'll be able to save everything and see it afterwards. Okay. So I hope this exercise also not only allowed yourself to feel a little bit more grounded or to ground yourself in how your mind and how your body are feeling now, but also to see the connection between how your mind is feeling and what's going on in your body. So then in terms of this idea of trauma or collective trauma, to me that means a shared set of experiences in which there's this common thread of distress throughout humanity, which is very particular to what's going on right now. So what is the sense of collective trauma that I'm talking about? It's really just this year, to be honest. Like 2020, I could just leave these numbers up and that's enough said. But let's reflect a little bit on what that means for our mind and body. Okay, so pretending that you're going outside in Minnesota winter and it's cold, you're putting on your hat, you're putting on your gloves. Wait, this is a regift of a regift of a regift, lots of love. You have your hat on. I don't know if y'all keep it nearby in case it gets cold when you're Zooming, but I have mine. You have your gloves, these are nice lobster gloves, and which you need in Minnesota. Sometimes keeps your fingers warm. You're walking outside and you're like this. So, and there's a mask underneath you right now because of COVID, but you can't see it because of the gloves. So I don't know about you all, but just thinking about that, my shoulders start hunching up. Yes, these are winter biking gloves. Good call. So let's try this if you're open to it. Keeping in mind that any of this, these are all just offerings. So if you don't feel like this is something you want to try right now, then that's okay. So you can feel free to try this with me. You don't have to find your gloves or your hat unless you want to. But just imagining that you're outside in the cold, which is actually not that cold right now in a minute, at least in Duluth. So notice how, at least for me, my shoulders have gone up a little bit. I'm a little bit curled in. My fists are clenched. And then just try that for a second and then see if you can let it go. Letting your body go back into relaxation. Like Chris said, yeah. Noticing shoulders and back tense up too. So this idea of holding tension in our muscles and in our body and then letting it go is a form of progressive muscle relaxation, or PMR. And PMR has been demonstrated to be really helpful in terms of allowing us to relieve tension and stress and to ground ourselves. Because by practicing the sense of tension and stress, and then practicing letting it go, we can do that too when we are more unconsciously, or subconsciously, I should say, holding on to stress and tension in our body. So in that way, it can be helpful. But now let's just try that again and just hold. Holding for as long as you'd like, or as long as you feel your body is up for at this moment. And that holding of this tension, to me, is what 2020 feels like. There's not this stage afterwards in which we can allow our bodies to recover. It's a chronic state of being, a chronic state of stress now. So, getting warm with this. And that's just something I like you all to keep in mind as we talk about letting go of this collective trauma that's held in our bodies. So with COVID and the pandemic, we are seeing these maps left and right? Like this is the one from Johns Hopkins, all these dots that in essence show in some way, somehow, people have been in the same physical space as each other. But these dots are not dots of healthy connection. They're dots of spreading disease. And even though it means we're sharing physical space, ironically, in a way, it also signifies us feeling unconnected, socially distanced, physically distanced, and which is particularly painful as we enter this holiday season. So remaining inside, looking out in the world, and even being outside, we see our friends, our BIPOC communities, they can't breathe. And things that are beyond our scope of present moment control. One with the pandemic and one with systemic inequalities, systemic racism, health disparities. All of these are coinciding this year for these syndemics. Keeping in mind that these collective traumas have differential effects for people. They will affect some groups more than others. Yet, even if you feel as though that you have the resources to cope and carry forth, there is a sense in which this is impacting all of us. Because imagine being in a room in which everybody is huddled like this. In a way, you'll begin to take on that tension. And that to me is collective trauma. So what we'll move on to, the bulk of the presentation, is talking about ways in which we can care for ourselves, in which you don't need anything but yourself, your mind, your body, your presence. Because a lot of the times when we talk about self-care, it involves getting something or buying something or finding something. But I think that you can find that within yourself. And by connecting within yourself, then we can connect with others. So there's the idea of you can't pour from a half empty cup. So we can't share with others if we're not filling up our own cup. How can we connect with others if we cannot connect with ourselves first? So this is just the place that we're starting from. And as we are in either lockdown or quarantine or isolating or keeping within our very small COVID pods, then what better time to practice the sense of self-connection? And there's one word that I would like you all to take away from today. It's this idea of interoception. So the research in terms of mind-body trauma care is really much rooted in interoception. So we know our five senses, and interoception is another sense that relates to being able to connect with your bodily sensations, an internal awareness of your bodily states. So it's ability to turn inward. And the reason why this is so important in trauma care is because trauma lives in our bodies. You all experience that when you practice being cold and going outside. The same idea with any sort of trauma. Our bodies hold the memories of the past, even though they live in the present. And so by connecting with that sense of self in our present and being able to delineate the trauma that we hold in our bodies, then well-being can come forth. So there's a lot of empirical evidence with this. This is basically the mechanism of change that's behind trauma-sensitive yoga and a lot of mind-body practices. So keeping that in mind, that these activities are just ways to bridge our mind-body connection and check in with ourselves. And also keeping in mind that one size does not fit all. So just like the collective trauma that we're experiencing, disproportionately affecting other groups more than others, keeping in mind that these are just suggestions, they're just possibilities that I'm offering. And you can take or leave whatever you'd like, knowing that not everything is likely going to work for you. You can adapt things. Maybe you'll share with others. So my hope is that either something here will resonate with you or can be shared with somebody else and hopefully resonates with them. So we're just going to experience some ways in which we can cultivate a sense of intraconnectedness with ourselves, and then in order to foster interconnectedness with others. So much kind of like a snow globe, just experimenting, just going to shake things up, see how they settle, and just being an observer from the outside, seeing what connects with your body. Okay, so for this section, I'm going to break it down into 4 domains, looking at what's around us and then moving more to our physical self, the parts of ourselves that are usually covered and uncovered, and then bringing that all together for some movement. So the bulk of this will really be in the last 2 sections, and the last one, movement, and focusing on our body parts that are typically uncovered. So the first 2 are pretty brief. Okay, so just starting a little bit away from us, but within our own environment. One aspect in terms of cultivating the sense of warmth is with light. So also keeping in mind that when I say warmth, it means physical and as well as emotional, whether that's a sense of feeling warm in an affective way or feeling warm in a physical way. So as you all noticed at the beginning, that mind-body bridge, words that we use to describe our mind can also be used to describe our body, and in turn they relate to each other. So with this, just looking around you right now and noticing if there are any lights that are on that you don't really need on at this moment. And then keeping this in mind too, just taking note of it at night. And then just seeing if there's any way that you can soften any of the lights that are around you. Maybe, with it being noon in Duluth, not the most pertinent time, but something to keep in mind for later as well. Then also when I think of light, I think of light that's emanating from technology. So this computer screen or phone screen or tablet screen that you're looking at right now is light that we're taking in that can really take our energy, our warmth as well. So something that I like to do is just keep my phone on nighttime mode. That's, I don't know what, I don't even know where my phone is at the moment, but I have an iPhone, so if you swipe up, there's a little moon thing and you can click that. So if you haven't explored that yet, you could do that now for a second. And even your laptop, your computer screen has a way to enter nighttime mode. So you can set that. So it comes on at sunrise, sunset, and then turns off at sunrise and vice versa. So that's just one way I think that it's very helpful, at least for me, to soften and just to allow no technology like right before bed. So then from there, from our outside world, we'll come a little bit more towards our physical form, just noticing what's on you. So you can take if you would like, I welcome you to take a moment now and notice just everything that your body is touching. The shirt you have on, the pants you have on. If you have on pajamas, no judgment there. Noticing the texture of the fabric. Does it feel rough? Does it feel smooth? Heavy? Soft? Itchy? Noticing the temperature of it. Does it feel cool? Warm? At times when my mind is feeling scattered, just focusing on these touch points can be really helpful. And it's something that's readily accessible to you. Like knowing that, for example, the shirt, if I held it in my hand, after doing laundry or something, it feels soft to the touch. Often when we're wearing it, once we put something on, we forget that it's soft, that it's comfortable. But if we can take our mind into our body and notice this feeling, then in a way that can create a different sense of warmth. Okay. Now moving on to the more exposed parts of our bodies. So our hands when they're not in gloves or lobster gloves, our hands do so much for us. They, just most things, they help with feeling, I don't know, typing. It's just so endless. I can't even think of examples. And yet we don't, even though people say something like the back of your hand, I don't even know if we really pay attention enough to our hands for that to be true. So right now I invite you just to close your hands like this, if you'd like. And rather than, so I know you all can also lead yourselves through noticing the textures, the temperature of your hands, the weight of your hands, how they connect to your shoulders. And right now, I'll ask if you can notice feeling a heartbeat within your hands. So you're welcome to share in the chat if you notice this. Yes. Yeah. Yes, I like that energy flowing through your body, feeling it strongly. Yeah, whether it's strong or subtle, whether you can feel it barely, if you feel it between your fingertips or in your palms. This is also another way of cultivating warmth and grounding yourself. And yeah, you might not notice it right away, right? It requires a little bit of stillness and a little bit of tuning in to yourself. Sometimes I like to visualize that my hands are holding my heart, but whatever works for you. Knowing that, I think in a way your hands or your fidget toys, your portable fidget toys, and even like massaging here, I find very helpful in terms of this point and connecting. I noticed somebody wrote headache before, so connecting to this point. Yeah, so as Toby said, sometimes tactile sensations can be painful and intrusive. So if these, again, don't work for you, then you definitely don't need to add them to your toolkit. And paying attention to what's going on in your body and not getting to that edge. So if you notice that your body is actually tensing up or you're clutching your fingers as you're doing this, then maybe this isn't something that you want to take with you. This is just one offering. So thanks for the reminder about that. Okay. And then another part is our face. Our face is so exposed. When we're all bundled up, you can still see, your eyes, the top of your nose. For the most part, unless you're biking, you have your goggles on. So we'll start with our eyes. If I invite you to close your eyes, if you feel comfortable doing so. And then just noticing the touch points of your eyes, your eyelids. Noticing the warmth of your eyelids on your eyeballs. It's like a subtle difference, but you can kind of feel that warmth or that heaviness on them. This is something that you can do in a meeting or on Zoom too, just closing your eyes for a second and allowing your eyes to experience that warmth. Another aspect is this idea called palming. I'm not sure if people have heard of it, but you begin just by warming your hands. So doing this, if it feels all right in your body, if this is a lot of tactile sensation, you don't have to. And then just gently putting your fingertips on top of your eyes. So it's a way of feeling into your eyes without putting weight on them. So just being mindful of that. And from that, there's also the idea of eye yoga, which I think we really need nowadays, given how much we're staring at a screen. So just bring your eyes to the corners of the room, looking up, adjusting side to side. And even just like winking. This you might not want to do during a meeting. Might get misinterpreted. But just ways in which you can, move your eyes and just notice the temperature difference between your eyelids, your skin, and your actual eyes. So there's a lot of ways to apply things. This second part is very applied. So then breathing in through our nose, as we breathe in with our mouths closed and breathing out through our nose, noticing the warmth or the cool air that's entering through your nostrils. We don't often think about the insides of our nose having a sort of sensation, but it does. And just see if you can notice the temperature of the air as you're breathing in and out. If you'd like, you can imagine yourself breathing in as you breathe in a warm orb is expanding and then constricting. I don't have an orb for you all, but it's kind of like this toy, if you can envision it, that like expands and then contracts. Expands, contracts. And allowing that to be a sense of heat that's going in and out. And I noticed somebody put in pranayama breathing, so ocean sounding breath. And that was really what I was, so thank you for sharing that. And yes, they do affect your parasympathetic nervous system. And actually the idea behind it, so when we are breathing in, our sympathetic nervous system is activating a little. And then as we breathe out, our parasympathetic nervous system is activating. So that's why there's this idea of as we breathe in, people tend to sometimes, especially if they're holding on to trauma or something is happening in the moment, they tend to have shallow breathing. So there's this idea of trying to make your exhales as long as your inhales. So you might have heard of box breathing. So breathing 4 seconds in, holding for 4, 4 seconds out, holding for 4. So if you look at box breathing online too, there are like really fun GIFs where you can, where it holds for you. So I saw that Brendan was on here, popped in from Women's Advocates. So if you ever go to any of their webinars, they have a box breathing thing at the beginning. And then from there, there's 4-8 breathing. So breathing in for 4 and then out for 8. So just trying for your exhale to be double the length of your inhale. And knowing that a count of 4 is whatever count of 4 that you want. You don't need to set a timer or anything. And knowing that your count of 4 can shift before or after at any moment. So maybe a count of 4 is longer and the next second it's shorter. And I also find it very interesting that this subtle difference, in counting for a breath of 4 really can shift your breathing practice. So like it's literally a difference of 4 seconds, but I notice the shifts when I decide to do like box breathing or 4-8 breathing. So yes, thank you. Oh, Yoga for the Eyes DVD. So yeah. Okay. And then this means mouth, but I just put smile on there. So t.a.t.u, this is like a physical therapy acronym. So it means teeth apart, tongue up. So just noticing like where your jaw is now. Also jaw exercises, just like running your tongue along your teeth, like that. And then noticing if your teeth are clenched, your jaw is clench. As I was unclenching, words were hard to say. So yeah. So one way to settle your jaw is having your teeth apart and your tongue up towards the roof of your mouth. And just noticing the way we clench our jaws, that can really be like, it's basically kind of like our shoulders. As we hunch our shoulders, clench our shoulders, we are also clenching our jaw at times. So this is just something to keep in mind. And Kappa body breathing was also something I was going to mention as well. So this idea of fast exhales. And as you're breathing too, you can bring the palm of your hand in front of your face and just notice the warmth of your breath as it hits your palm. So keeping in mind that this might be a lot of strategies that I'm bringing forth, and I hope by breaking it down by parts of your body or parts of your face, really, they will stick more, and then you can choose to use whatever works. Then, of course, with our mouth, there's a sense of taste. So whether you're having tea, whether you're having hot cocoa or coffee or a combination of both, which, you know, I'm a fan of. I actually have that now. Instant decaf coffee, and a tablespoon of hot cocoa, I recommend. Either way, as you're tasting it, feeling the warmth or the textures of your mug and the warmth, even the textures of what you're drinking. And since I had mentioned before that this is something that doesn't require resources outside yourself, I just want to say that you can definitely do this with water, because I hope people are getting their 8 cups of water, whatever amount of water your body needs. And for me, I like to start following some Ayurvedic medicine principles. I like to start my day with a glass of water that's at room temperature. So basically, I just pour a glass of water the night before, leave it on my kitchen counter covered, and then that's the first thing that I take in the next morning. All right. And I noticed that there are a lot of good suggestions too in the chat, talking about turning off computers, taking a technology break, and noticing that. So yeah, I welcome you to also read the chat to see what everyone's thinking and their suggestions too. So from there, we'll move on to the last piece, which is putting it all together and looking at movements that we can do. So some of the things I had mentioned before, they're a little bit more subtle. So whether it's our breath or just noticing what's going on. So for this last segment, this is more movement that we can practice. So just like the snow person, arms up, right? So we think that the snow creature is standing still, but really they're getting a pretty decent stretch standing out there. Okay. So one of my favorites is just this idea of self-massage. So taking your handy dandy hands, and then if you feel comfortable, just putting them on your shoulders like this, and allowing the weight of your elbows to press on your shoulders a little bit. And then with this, just you can pretend you're playing the piano, just noticing the tension in your shoulders. Yes, so the idea behind, so I'll talk about some Ayurvedic workshops later that I've taken. So I'm definitely not an Ayurvedic specialist in any way, but it's this idea of taking in something that's in line with our temperature at the moment. It's either warm or room temperature water. It's not taking in something that's cold and kind of shocks your system in the morning, even though like wetting your eyes with cold water is helpful, because in that way you're helping yourself get awake. So that's also a Ayurvedic practice. So yes, there's this idea of self-massage that can be done wherever, I think secretly too, or like even if you're in a meeting. You find me on Zoom, I'm probably doing something like this. Especially in your shoulders, that's where I carry a lot of tension. But as I mentioned before, you might also find that in your hands. And since we had talked, so just pressing right here is a tender point for people. And even around your face. So even just outlining your eyebrows. We were talking about technology earlier. All that our eyes do for us. And then in terms of some movements, you'll see here, hugging a pillow. If that's a softer tactile sensation for you than your own body. But another like somatic movement. So I'm right against this wall. So this is it's just slowly giving yourself a hug. You can even switch which arm is on top of the other. But if you're lying down and you do this so slowly and just noticing all the stutters in your shoulder joint. So this is something in which we're building warmth in our body without moving fast. This is the way in which we're cultivating that warmth by moving slowly. And keeping that in mind if you have a yoga practice or a somatic movement practice. We're trying to build that warmth, not through sweating, but through our inner sense of self. And then, if you have a blanket around or a dog, I don't have a dog, but I wish. And you can see that this dog is practicing lion's breath. So, which I won't practice for you here only because this is being recorded. But you can do that now if you'd like. So since I can't see you, you can totally practice lion's breath, sticking out your tongue, giving a really big roar. So from this, connecting with our inner sense of self, that intraconnectedness, to help foster a sense of interconnectedness with others. So knowing that as we can connect better with ourselves, then we can connect better with others. With this idea of loving kindness within ourselves and spreading that. So I imagine that a few of you or many of you are familiar with loving kindness meditations. So one that I particularly enjoy is like, may you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be happy, May you live with ease. So something simple that you can repeat for others, for yourself. If there's any other loving kindness meditation or phrases that you'd like to share, you can definitely share them in the chat, because you can definitely make your own. Those are ones that I just find easy to say or easy for me to resonate with. And just again, another reminder that one size doesn't fit all in all of this. So these were just many suggestions, many offerings, many possibilities. If you'd like to explore, to experiment with in your snow globe and see what settles and what works for you. My hope today is just so you all can recognize that you can cultivate the sense of warmth, the sense of inner strength for yourself.
Well, Leanne, thank you very much. I think we'll move into the Q&A at this time. Lots of questions are coming in.
I just have one poll.
Okay. Oh, you want one? Okay.
Yeah. So with this, so this was a lot of information, and let's see which would you like to see yourself practicing today, whether that's focusing on the environment around you, something closer to your physical form, focusing more on parts of your body that are usually uncovered during the day, or something that involves movement. So the middle two being more stillness focused. So, just a mini commitment to yourself, or something else that you're definitely welcome to share in the chat. For this one, there's only one option. So just one thing that you'd like to specifically focus on, since we can't do all of them.
I'm going to close the poll momentarily here. So if you haven't submitted your answer, please do that. Looks like we've gotten a response from a good amount of people.
They were sharing their loving kindness. May I, and then may you, and then may we. Something to keep in mind.
So I'm sharing the results here now, and it looks like the majority said number 4 with 51% that they'll practice the movement practices you outlined.
Okay. Thanks all. So yeah, make note of that for yourself if you'd like. And my email address is on the last page, so which I can pop to now. These are resources that Molly will send out. So there's my email if you have any questions. So now any comments, questions, answers? If you have answers, I would love them.
Well, Leanne, a number of good questions have come in, and I have to say I particularly have enjoyed the chat today. It's just so many great suggestions that you're sharing, amongst the community that gathered. But I'm going to begin with this question. Can you define sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system?
Oh yeah, I want to clarify, I'm not a neuroscientist in any way. But so when I think of parasympathetic nervous system, the R in there, I use the words like relax, like rest and relax. So that's when your body is more in this like recovery phase. So thinking about, not like, and then with sympathetic, that's when your body is being activated. So sometimes people take a deep breath in to kind of activate themselves before doing something. And then the parasympathetic system allows you to calm down. So the idea of sympathetic being fight or flight, and then para being rest and relax. And then there's literature on a freeze response, especially in terms of trauma, and a fawning response in terms of trauma. So four things.
So another question about sympathetic, parasympathetic. Is there any research about how technology affects the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system?
I don't know if there's specifically research on technology affecting those systems per se versus technology affecting our cognition. There is a new American Psychological Association journal called Mind, Body, and Technology. And that will be definitely, I think, a resource to seeing how much of the bodily systems the journal and researchers who submit that journal have delved into.
So this person writes, do you have any self-care techniques for when you feel lost and like you want to give up?
That's a big question. Yeah. So I think the techniques I shared with you all today, I use them more for grounding. And sometimes with that sense of grounding, it allows me to have a little bit of like foresight into what it is that I feel like giving up on. Like not so much sitting and cognitively exploring it that per se, because sometimes we put too much cognitive energy, we neglect what we're feeling. But it can just help me recognize that maybe it's not the biggest deal, or there is recognizing that because I can cultivate the strength within myself, there is a sense of agency, there is a sense of internal control, locus of control that I can do.
So, I think a lot of the techniques, Vianne, you've talked about the self-care techniques can both reduce stress as well as raise awareness and consciousness about how people are feeling. I think if somebody actually really feels like they want to give up, that suggests to me that it might be very helpful to reach out to somebody, reach out to a mental health professional, to get support and to get advice. And I have to say that we know that during the pandemic, there just has been such a rise in people experiencing a lot of stress, anxiety, and depression. The mental health issues have really surfaced. So really important to, I think, to be aware of those and to consider reaching out and getting help. This is a question that somebody wrote about avoid, they hold stress on their jaw, their shoulders. And do you have any specific strategies for helping to alleviate stress in areas like that?
Yeah, I definitely hold stress there as well. And to go back to what you had mentioned, Mary Jo, yes, definitely social support is key. I guess I was thinking cognitively and thought you meant like giving up on a task at hand, but giving up more broadly than that, definitely seeking more broadly beyond yourself is helpful. Definitely needed. And like Cynthia mentioned, having one person makes a huge difference. There's a lot of research on that in childhood adversity. Having one caretaker who cares makes a huge difference. And in terms of shoulder tension, so I like what I had mentioned before, this just using the weight of your own body on your shoulders really helps me. And kind of like using your hands like a paintbrush and just stroking from the back of your neck and downward. And just very slow somatic movements as well. So a lot of times we try to do things quickly, right? Because we think that's how that will be most helpful, but really we want slow somatic movement. And there's a Yara Yoga workshop or site that I linked in the resources that has a lot of that is more somatic movement focus, and as well as Ayurvedic workshops that I very much enjoy. And the person who runs that is a Duluth local. So that's, yeah. And I think just being mindful too of how we carry ourselves, even when we're sitting. So I actually, I have a softball that I just keep like right now behind my, on my chair, because that helps keep my back straight and my shoulders straight. So that's something I just, yeah.
One of the participants actually wrote in the chat just now, I pull my shoulders up to my ears, hold, and then release. It feels so good. So I think that's another one that works really well. So somebody's writing, Vianne, about COVID fatigue. And they say, I am finding myself at such a low energy almost constantly. Are there any self-care tips for creating energy for your mind and body?
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of energy goes towards taking in COVID information. So with that idea of looking at what's around us, is there any sort of COVID news that we can turn off? Like what is it that we really need to know? Will that information come to us some other way without us seeking it? That's kind of my approach too in terms of information. I figure if it's very important in terms of like breaking news, somebody will start a conversation about it. I'll hear about it, or I have a breaking news alert on my phone rather than actively checking like my Apple news feed that gives information. So that's just something I like to do. So something to be mindful of as well.
So another suggestion, that I would have for somebody that's feeling such a low level of energy, there's so much research that connecting with nature and spending time outdoors can really enhance our health and well-being. And so even if it's just getting outdoors for, 5-10 minutes, there's a whole area, and there's a lot of information on our Taking Charge of Your Health and Wellbeing website about nature-based therapies and nature-based interventions. And I think that's really a good way to stimulate energy. So a couple of questions, Vianne, that asks, how did you get into this work? And what do you actually do in a mind-body trauma lab? What do you study?
Yeah, I entered this work in embodied healing. In the forward, I wrote about how I entered this work, and that book, by the way, all proceeds go to the trauma sensitive yoga center. But basically, it's like just my own personal practice of mind-body connection and healing, and also not recognizing that it was a way in which, like, just recognizing that trauma is held within the body. And because I actually never really thought that I was going to be researching yoga per se, because that was just a practice that I had on my own. And then somebody had mentioned it to me. So when I was doing research in occupational and environmental health, so my public health career before I moved into psychology, my principal investigator at the time just knew I liked yoga. And he was like, have you heard of like prenatal hot yoga? Wouldn't that be something really interesting to look into? And I was like, I never thought about like researching that. And from there, it became a focus on mind, body, and trauma care. So in the lab, I like a lot of community engagement, partnering with community groups, essentially with the goal of bringing trauma-informed holistic interventions out to individuals who might not otherwise access them. So thinking of the idea of demystifying what yoga is, what mind-body connection is, holistic care, those are kind of, I guess, buzzwords that people have preconceptions about. So knowing that it's accessible to everyone, you don't have to wear certain clothes to practice yoga or mind-body connection. You don't have to go anywhere. It's really all within yourself.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Vianne, for participating today in the Wellbeing webinar and for answering questions. There's just been a lot of fun conversations that have occurred in the chat today. So I'm going to offer a few closing comments. If you're interested in this whole topic of mind-body connection, that focus permeates almost every academic and community course that the Bakken Center offers. And I wanted you to also know that the Bakken Center offers a 3-course sequence of Hatha Yoga teacher's education and training for academic credit. We have a website, and I think Molly has put the link in the chat a couple times, called Taking Charge of Your Health and Wellbeing, that's visited by more than 2.5 million unique visitors every year. Lots of tips focused on self-care, resilience, and well-being, and a lot of the breathing techniques that Vianne talked about today in the webinar. There are little videos that will teach you how to do those things. We encourage you to visit that site and explore the center's well-being model and learn about the impact of your community, relationships, health, environment, sense of purpose, and security on your overall well-being. We will be sending you out links to our academic courses and to the Taking Charge site, all of the resources that Vianne spoke about today after the webinar is complete. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'd like to wish you, on behalf of the Bakken Center, happy holidays.
Thank you, everyone. Also nice to see some UMD alumni. Caitlin. Oh, yes. Oh, aw. Student Counseling Center folks too. And yeah, my email address, contact info is here, so you're welcome to reach out whenever. Hi, Emily.